What is going on, snooker fans, and welcome to the first Snooker Addict End of Season Awards. Now, I am basically copying World Snooker, who've already done their awards video for this season, where they've picked, player of the season, moment of the season, etc., for moments voted by fans. And I am completely stealing that, doing it myself. I'm stealing some of the categories, I'm adding some of my own categories in, and ultimately I'm going to pick a winner for each category, and I'm going to give some of my thoughts about the winner or the category or both. In this video, I'm going to have my player of the season, my moment of the season, my favourite tournament of the season, and more. But to kick it off, I'm going to start with the best break compiled this season. And look, I was going through which break to pick because there are so many compiled this season which deserve to win, let alone, get like a third or fourth spot. Honourable mentions, firstly, go to Luca Bressel for this break against Graham Dott at the Welsh Open earlier this year. Sensational. This is the screenshot that shows you what the table was like when he got to the table. And if you believe that he would clear the table in one visit, you'd call me mad. You wouldn't believe it. It was a sensational break. And the fact that this hasn't won tells you what other amazing breaks were made this season. He goes on to make a break of 75 all the way up to the black to win the frame and the match against Graham Dott. And even John Verger in commentary said, you will not find a better break than this all season. And so, sorry, John, I am going against you, obviously. But just an unbelievable break from Luca here. Also in the mix was this clearance from Judd Trump against Shaun Murphy. He's 55 points down when he comes to the table, and this is the screenshot of the table when he comes to the table. So to make a clearance from that position is unbelievable in itself, but the break also consisted of this shot, which is just phenomenal.
No. Wow.
Yeah, just a ridiculous shot there from Judd in what was an unbelievable clearance. Obviously, he goes on, clears the table, wins the frame, he won the match, and Alan McManus couldn't have put it any better. One of the best shots that's ever been played in the history of the sport. And that in itself wasn't enough to put this into the top break of the season. There's a couple of others I want to mention. The first being what John Higgins produced against Mark Allen in the decider at the Crucible last month. If ever there was an example of why John Higgins is the best player at making counter clearances in those situations, that was it. 12 all, 60 odd points behind in the decider. Now, out of the breaks that I'm going to show in this category, this is arguably the most straightforward in terms of the position of the balls. But still, the double that he made to start the break was unbelievable. Held his nerve throughout the break. Even the last red, that was probably just as difficult as the double that he started with. He knocks that in, clears the table. Just an incredible break. And like I say, I think if you ever get asked the question, who is one player you'd back to be 60 points behind in a decider to clear up if your life depended on it, John Higgins is going to be right at the top of that list. And he again showed it in that clearance against Mark Allen. But that all said, fair play to Luca Bressel, to Judd Trump and to John Higgins. But there is one winner of the best break for me, and that is Shaun Murphy at the shootout earlier this year. He made a 147 in the snooker shootout, which is a feat that I don't think I ever considered really to be a possibility. Making a century at the shootout is difficult enough. To make a 147, the more you think about it, the more ridiculous it becomes. Obviously, the shootout is a 10-minute frame, so you've only got 10 minutes to make the 147. But then you consider the fact that you're playing on a 15-second and then a 10-second shot clock on every single shot. It makes it even more incredible. Now, I know people will argue, O'Sullivan's was still faster and, O'Sullivan's was still better, blah, blah, blah. I'm not disputing that. I'm not disputing that Murphy's is better or not. That's not what I'm here for. I'm just here to highlight just the sheer brilliance of it. not only has he got all the time pressures, he has also got, the crowd screaming and shouting. And also, when you look at O'Sullivan's 147, an incredible achievement, and I'm taking nothing away from what Ronnie did. It's just Ronnie had all the reds and all the colours perfectly. Murphy had to pull off some, mightily difficult recovery shots on a 147, including the final blue. Just the most astounding accomplishment. I never thought a 147 would be talked about in the kind of same breath as what O'Sullivan done in that 5-minute 20 147. But I'm doing it here. Murphy's, if it's not the best, it's the second best. It was unbelievable. And a break that's going to live long in the memory. So Shaun Murphy, you are our first winner in the end of season awards. Right, and now whilst I'm editing this video, I've just realised that there's another break that I forgot to mention in this section of the video. And that was this break by Mark Williams against Tom Ford at the Tour Championship. Again, comes to the table 54 points down of this table. And he cleared it all the way to the pink with a break of 66. And again, just an unbelievable break. The circumstances of it, he was something like 8-4 and 9-7 ahead. Tom Ford's come back at him. Looks like he's got the frame one. And to produce that was again just absolute magic. And even in the context of the tournament, after making that break to win the match, he goes on to beat the top 3 players in the world in Mark Allen, Judd Trump and O'Sullivan to win the title. So that break was so important. And even though I still think that Murphy's was the best break, I did need to add this to the video as well. Into my second category now, and it's a category that I wanted to have a little bit of fun with, and that is the best or maybe worst dressed player of the season. And it's a category that I came up with before I even thought about which players I would put into this category, because I thought, there's going to be at least a few outlandish outfits out there. But disappointingly this season, there are very, very few. Even Dominic Dale, he's a man that you normally rely on to be wearing a kind of outfit that Miranda Priestley would judge heavily on. But even here, he didn't really wear anything outlandish. Maybe at the World Championship he's got this little funky bow tie, but that's it. And the only contenders for this category came in the same match, and that was at the Tour Championship between O'Sullivan and Gary Wilson. Gary Wilson wearing this... Gary, to be fair to him, has always had a little bit of edge. There was a point where he was completely bald, but then he had like a backwards mohawk at the back of his head. I never really understood that. And then he started putting colours in it. Very bizarre behaviour. But I've got to say, I do actually like this waistcoat. I think he should have worn it more often. It's a bit funky, it's a bit out there, but I think that's what snooker needs. It needs some more, colour. But the winner ultimately goes to Ronnie O'Sullivan. I am absolutely loving this little mustard shirt he's got on. Maybe people hate it, and again, I'm very disappointed by the lack of options in this category. But we need more colours. Lee Hang, he was another player who wore sort of ridiculous combinations between suit and jacket, but we don't get that enough. Snooker players are very boring, very beige. They wear their white or black or blue shirts and just a black suit. We need more characters. So O'Sullivan, thank you for giving us a bit of mustard yellow. Not for everyone, but I strangely quite like this. The next category we've got here is the best or magic moment of the season, and there's a couple of contenders that I've already talked about that include Shaun Murphy's shootout 147 and that ridiculous yellow by Judd Trump in his clearance against Murphy. But there's a couple of other mentions. I think Zhang Anda winning his first ever tournament, making a 147 en route to that win as well. Incredible moment for a player who no one saw what he was about to do coming. You've got O'Sullivan as well, 8th UK title, 8th Masters title. If he had gone and won an 8th World Championship as well, this title would easily be his as well. But I think in general, it's quite an unfair category because it's something that's always or nearly always going to be won by the world champion. And it has to be again this season. Kyle Wilson, with all that he's had to go through off the table, to get through that and then come to the World Championship and produce what he produced was very, very special. I've reviewed the tournament. He was incredible. Regardless of the weaker field that he had to beat, it was a fantastic performance from start to finish. And, that release of emotion that he showed just shows, obviously, how much that meant to him. And first world titles are always the ones to look at when players win them. Every world title is special, but I think every player remembers their first vividly. And, it's a moment that's going to be locked in history books forever. And it's going to be in Kyle Wilson's history books. Who knows if he's going to win 2 or 3 or maybe even more. But to get your name and your hands on that trophy once is an incredible achievement. And he's done that. And again, this award deservedly goes to Kyle Wilson. Going into the next category, and this is the underdog performance of the season. And quite frankly, there is only one player that could ever win this, and that is Zhang Anda. What an incredible season he's had. The win at the International Championship was not a fluke. He also reached 2 other finals. He reached 3 further quarterfinals this season. And all from a man who, he's been around the game for a long, long while. He's qualified for the Crucible a few times before. He's beaten, top players here and there. But I don't think anyone would ever thought of him as more of a sort of top 32, top 48 type of player. No one, absolutely no one, probably not even Zhang Anda himself, would have envisaged what happened over the past sort of 9 or 10 months. Just incredible. And he's fully merited it. Like I say, it's not a fluke. This is just consistently good runs of form. And the only sort of blemish to his record this season was his very poor performance at the World Championship, where he lost in the first round. And he never got going against Jack Jones, losing 10-4. But that aside, incredible season. He's up into the top 10 in the world rankings, which basically guarantees him, a UK Championship seeding again, probably a Masters seeding. And it will take a lot for him to fall out to the top 16 for the World Championship as well, purely because he's not going to have many points to defend from 2 years ago. All of his points have come from this season. So if anything, he's got a platform to go even higher in the rankings. And it will be interesting to see now if this was maybe sort of a one-trick pony, if it's something that he could only produce in one season, or whether he can replicate that again next season. Obviously, that's to be seen. But as for this term, an incredible season. And like I say, there was only one winner of this category, and it was Zhang Anda. The next category is the tournament of the season. The tournament that I think, not only did I personally get the most enjoyment out of, but a tournament that I feel like had the most consistent, high quality matches and players. And normally this would probably go to the World Championship. This season's World Championship would have been a worthy winner as well. It had plenty of talking points. Kyle Wilson winning his first, Jack Jones getting to the final, all of the qualifiers making their deep runs, seeds falling left, right and centre. But for me, this year's best or outstanding tournament was the 2023 UK Championship. The tournament had 9 deciders. It had a further 9 6-4s. And then, of course, it had that brilliant final between Ronnie and Ding. And I just feel like in terms of quality, this was the standout. There were so many players in good form and so many players in good form playing against each other, which brought out some incredible matches. But yeah, that final in particular, I think a really good tournament can sometimes be let down by a disappointing final. We didn't get that. The only shame was the final didn't go to a decider. But O'Sullivan, obviously, from 7-all produced that breathtaking spell of 3 unplayable frames to win 10-7. But, a really, really high standard tournament. And for me, fully deserves getting this award. From the best tournament of the season, my next award is for the best match of the season. And, typically when you think of best match of the season, normally it would be a final. Recently I can think of the 2018 World Final, the 2019 Champion of Champions final as 2 really good examples of finals that would easily win match of the season. But this year, the finals have been a little bit underwhelming in general. We've had a few, stories in world finals, but in major finals, I should say. But most of the time, they've been sort of runaway winners, particularly for Judd and for Ronnie. So my selection, firstly, I've got the Judgment Day match between Ryan Day and Scott Donaldson. Ryan Day at one point was 7-2 ahead. He then falls 8-7 behind before the pressure switches again. And, to win 10-9 after surrendering a 7-2 lead is a massive achievement. It was the biggest demonstration of why the longer format matches are the best in the world and why we love the World Championship so much. There's also a number of matches, including Mark Allen, particularly his Masters quarterfinal against Mark Selby. He was 4-1 down and he had made a 1-4-7, but he turned that around to win 6-5. There was also a UK Championship quarterfinal between Ding and Mark Williams, which Ding won 6-5, and that was probably Ding's arguably his biggest win of the season so far. And it was the win that really catapulted him towards that final where he was very, very close to beating O'Sullivan as well. But in terms of my match of the season, I do feel like I'm being swayed a little bit here by recency bias, but I can't think of anyone else than to go for the second round match at the Crucible between Mark Allen and John Higgins. In terms of quality, it might not have been the highest quality match of the season. But sometimes I think what makes the best matches is a mixture of, high quality scoring and break building, but then you've also got the close tactical frames and also easy misses as well. And I don't think any match this season demonstrated that as well as this match between Higgins and Allen. There was a point when Mark Allen won 5 frames in a row from 7-5 behind to go 10-7 ahead. And at that point, it kind of felt like there was only ever going to be one winner. But the ending of that match was just truly sensational. Obviously, I've already talked about that clearance Higgins made and decided to win. But even the frame before it, Mark Allen was a pretty heavy favourite to win that frame as well and win 13-11. Higgins made a pretty good dish from green to black to force the decider. And then, what happened in the decider will remain in World Championship history forever. And just because of the narrative of that match, for me, this has been the match of the season. And therefore, to round it off, we've only got one more category to award, and that is the Player of the Season. And with all due credit, there have been contenders. Zhang Anda, with the most unforeseeably amazing season that he's had. 1 tournament win, 2 finals. Incredible. You've also got players like Gary Wilson, Mark Allen, Mark Williams, players who have won multiple tournaments this season. But it could only ever be between 2 men, and that's 5-time ranking event winner Judd Trump and 5-time tournament winner Ronnie O'Sullivan. And look, in any other season, Judd Trump would have won this award easily. To win 5 ranking tournaments in a season is incredible. It's the 3rd time he's done it as well, which shows that he can just be so relentless when he gets that sort of winning mood going. But this season, Ronnie O'Sullivan, not only has he won 5 titles, he's won 2/3 of the Triple Crown at the UK Championship and the Masters. And if there was another reason that slightly separates him from Judd, it's the fact that both of them played each other twice this season. And O'Sullivan won on both occasions out in Saudi Arabia and also the Players' Championship final as well. Just another example of why Ronnie O'Sullivan just isn't going anywhere. Whatever highs he has in his career, somehow he keeps managing to either match those highs or exceed them. He was very close to winning the Triple Crown in a season for the first time in his career. But disappointing World Championship aside, phenomenal. He's still got that X factor. And what's possibly even more impressive is he never really was in top gear this season. The one match you can probably highlight is that semi-final against Ding. I want to say it was at the Players' Championship of the World Grand Prix, where he won 5-0, and you just won't see a better display than that. Ding didn't have a prayer. For most of the time, Ronnie just relied on his baseline being good enough to beat most players. And unfortunately, there are players as well who demonstrated that they kind of feel like they're beaten before they go onto the table with Ronnie. And that fear factor, even, as he's pushing 50, still remains. And look, he's going to be difficult to stop next season as well. There's still the question mark of whether he can get into 8 world titles. I still think he's got, a good few years left to possibly do that, which is insane given his age. But he's not slowing down. He is still the benchmark and, fully worthy of this award. Like I say, Judd Trump has been sensational and he deserves every credit. And if you give Judd Trump Player of the Season as well, I'm not going to argue with that. 5 ranking titles, he deserves it. But, O'Sullivan's just had that little bit extra, particularly in the bigger matches and the bigger tournaments. And for that reason, he wins this award to cap off what has been a sensational snooker season.